Let me tell you something, if you've never seen a hospital hallway turn icy, you should have been there that Thursday morning when Dr. Catherine Wellington, all business suit and frostbite, stopped me dead in my tracks right outside room 312. "Are you sure this young man should be taking care of our most important patient?" she called out, voice sharp enough to cut glass. Now, I'd like to say I was surprised, but I wasn't. 3 years at Mount Sinai had taught me that no matter how many diplomas you hang behind your name, some people only ever see what's on the surface. My name's Andres Santos, and at 27, I was used to being the wrong answer in the right place. "Dr. Wellington," I said, keeping my tone calm, "Victoria Blackwood has improved significantly since I took over." But she just crossed her arms, blue eyes narrowing like I was a loose tile on the marble floor. That's the thing about hospitals with wings named after families. Every patient's another dollar sign, and the Blackwoods had signed enough checks to build half the new pediatric wing. And in their eyes, letting a guy like me handle their golden child, that was just asking for trouble. Victoria had been in a coma for months, a yachting accident, too much privilege, not enough luck. 25, the kind of blonde you see on magazine covers, and with a mother who wore power the way other women wear perfume. The Blackwoods treated everyone like staff, and if you didn't look like them, well, let's just say you weren't first pick for the high-profile cases. But I'd studied at Johns Hopkins, published articles most people only read about, and still I was always on trial every day, every shift, every damn case. I walked into Victoria's room that morning, sun filtering through curtains that probably cost more than my car. She was motionless, hooked up to every machine known to man, surrounded by flowers and silence. But I'd noticed things, little things, the flicker of an eyelid, a shift in her breathing, tiny signals that screamed, "I'm still here." I'd seen those signs before, back in school, when everyone said coma patient for lost causes. I didn't believe it then, and I sure wasn't about to start now. "Good morning, Victoria," I said, changing her bandages and talking to her like she could hear me, because, deep down, I felt she could. What I didn't know, she'd been listening for weeks, trapped in her own body, catching every word, every microaggression, every discussion about whether that young black doctor was really up to the job. For the first time in her life, she was getting judged for something other than her last name. And let me tell you, it shook her to her core. Just as I finished my exam, the door swung open by Margaret Blackwood herself, all pearls and disapproval, swept in with her son Richard and, of course, Dr. Wellington on her heels. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Margaret demanded, voice colder than an operating room in December. I kept my hands where they could see them. "Routine neurological checks," I answered, professional as ever. But Richard scoffed. "Funny how you're seeing things no one else has. You know what I mean? That kind of sneer that makes you want to laugh and scream at the same time." The sad part? I'd published research, held up under scrutiny, but it didn't matter. To them, my achievements were always a surprise, always a fluke. Wellington cut me off. "Maybe you should focus on patients more suited to your experience." The code was clear. Poor folks. People nobody wanted. I glanced at Victoria's monitor, saw the subtle spike in her heart rate. She was hearing every word. That broke me more than all the rest. I told Margaret flat out, "Victoria's showing signs of consciousness. And if I'm right, she's heard everything in this room." Silence. The kind that makes your skin crawl. For a second, I saw something crack in Margaret's perfect exterior. Guilt. Or maybe just fear. "Is it even possible?" she stammered. "More than you think," I replied. "Families should talk to their loved ones like they're listening, because sometimes they are." But politics won out. Dr. Harrison, old, connected, and about as current as a rotary phone, was brought in to take over the case. They pushed me aside, and I left that room feeling like I just watched someone drown and couldn't throw them a rope. Before I walked out, I whispered to Victoria, "You're stronger than they know. I'll keep fighting for you." As I left, a single tear slipped down her cheek, the first real movement in months. And nobody saw it but me. I took everything I'd noticed, charts, video clips, data, back to my cramped apartment. Night after night, I reviewed it with my old mentor from Hopkins, Dr. Wilson, a legend who'd seen my potential when I was just a broke kid from the Bronx. "You're sure about this?" he asked over Zoom, eyeing my graphs. Absolutely, I replied. Victoria's been in there for weeks just trapped. I had everything. Timestamps, subtle changes, even different responses when certain people entered the room. And yeah, I found some weird stuff in her old medical files, Dr. Harrison had ignored key signs, kept her on meds that might have been prolonging her coma. I smelled a rat, and this time it wore a lab coat. Meanwhile, Margaret and Richard were pressuring Harrison for aggressive treatments, hinting at risky surgeries to speed things up. Nobody knew it, but Victoria, now increasingly aware, was listening, terrified. The contrast between my care and their recklessness became painfully clear. That's when I decided to go nuclear. I called in every favor, reached out to Dr. Wilson, and asked him to connect me with Dr. Reeves at the State Medical Board and, just for good measure, a producer from an investigative news show. You sure about this, Andre? Wilson warned. The Blackwoods play hardball. I just smiled. They're going to lose something more precious than money, their reputation. Turns out, I'd found proof the Blackwoods were using Victoria's coma to stall her inheritance, keeping her in limbo for their own financial gain. But that wasn't my only ace. Using some advanced neuro techniques, I established basic communication with Victoria, hand squeezes, light cues, responses nobody else had the patience to look for. In secret, we planned our move. Thursday morning came, and with it, the showdown. Harrison was set to pitch an experimental surgery to the family, dangerous, reckless, and completely unnecessary. As he droned on, I walked in, flanked by Dr. Reeves, a cameraman, and Dr. Wilson himself. The room went dead silent. "Excuse me," I announced, "but you're about to risk Victoria Blackwood's life based on negligence and prejudice." Margaret exploded, but Reeves flashed her badge legal authority to investigate. Right there. Harrison tried to bluster, but his hand shook. I played recordings Harrison admitting he hadn't kept up with research, financial records showing questionable payments, and most damning of all, proof that Victoria had been showing signs of waking up for weeks. The bombshell? A live video feed Victoria, sitting up, fully conscious, speaking to a nurse. The room froze. She woke up 3 days ago, I explained. She wanted to witness this herself. Dr. Wilson turned to Harrison. 30 years in medicine. Harold, and you're going to cut into a conscious patient? That's not just negligent, that's criminal. Margaret tried to last stand. You can't prove we knew. But I had transcripts, proof of every conversation, every plan to use Victoria's coma for the family business. Reeves announced, Dr. Harrison, you're suspended. The hospital's donation is being returned pending investigation. And then Victoria's voice came through the speakers, strong and clear. I've been conscious for 4 months. Dr. Santos saved my life not just by keeping me alive, but by treating me like a human being. My family and Dr. Harrison nearly killed me with their arrogance. Dr. Santos saw what no one else cared to see. Harrison stammered, but Victoria cut him off. You put politics above patient care. I'm alive because one doctor cared enough to do his job. Reeves finished the job naming me head of neurology, funding my research, suspending Harrison on the spot. The Blackwoods left broken. Their empire of prestige, built on arrogance, was now rubble. But the real twist? Victoria wasn't just a patient anymore. 6 months later, Mount Sinai was transforming me. Protocols saved dozens of lives, and my team was as diverse as New York itself. Together, Victoria and I started the Santos Blackwood Foundation, fighting discrimination in medicine and funding education for kids like Meckids who only ever needed a shot. The Blackwoods faded into obscurity, their fortunes slashed, their influence gone. Harrison couldn't even get a job as a small-town doctor. But me? The same hospitals that once questioned my credentials were now begging for my advice. You know what impresses me most? Victoria said one afternoon, reviewing our latest case. It wasn't revenge, it was how you changed everything. I just nodded. In the old conference room, now home to our mentoring program, a new plaque read, "Competence has no color, gender, or last name." These days, when young doctors face pushback, they don't quit. They ask themselves, what would Dr. Santos do? The answer's always the same. Work harder, prove yourself, and never let anyone else define your worth. So what do you think? Was justice served? Or is the system still too broken to fix? I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? Drop a comment, share your story, and let's talk about what real justice looks like when the lights go out and only character is left shining.